The truth about Jesus' crucifixion. What if I told you that the cross was never an accident? Jesus knew he was going to suffer. He knew he would be betrayed, beaten, mocked, and crucified. Yet he still walked toward the cross. Why? Why would Jesus willingly suffer and die? And what really happened in those final hours? In this video, we'll uncover the biblical story of Jesus' crucifixion and discover why the cross changed everything. Stay until the end, because the most important part of the story happened after Jesus died. Jesus knew what was coming. The night before his crucifixion, Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane. He knew his arrest was coming. He knew the suffering that awaited him. Matthew 26:38 records Jesus saying, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." Jesus was deeply distressed, but he prayed to his Father. He said, "Yet not as I will, but as you will." Jesus had a choice. He could have avoided what was coming, but he chose obedience. He chose the Father's will, and he chose the cross. Jesus was betrayed and arrested. Then Judas arrived with a crowd carrying weapons. Judas approached Jesus and greeted him with a kiss. That kiss became the sign identifying Jesus to the soldiers. Jesus was arrested, but he did not fight back. He did not call his followers to attack. Instead, Jesus allowed himself to be taken. The one who had performed miracles was now treated like a criminal. The one who had healed others was about to be beaten. The one who had brought hope was about to face death. The trial of Jesus. Jesus was taken before the religious leaders. False accusations were brought against him. Eventually, Jesus was taken before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate questioned him, but he struggled to find a valid reason to put Jesus to death. Still, the crowd demanded crucifixion. The pressure became overwhelming, and Pilate eventually handed Jesus over to be crucified. Think about the contrast. Jesus was innocent, yet he was condemned. The guilty went free, the innocent was sentenced to death. And this points toward one of the central truths of the gospel. Jesus was giving his life for sinners. Jesus was beaten and mocked. Before the crucifixion, Jesus was severely beaten by Roman soldiers. They mocked him. They placed a crown of thorns on his head. They dressed him in a robe, and they mocked him as king. But Jesus really was king. The crown of thorns was meant to humiliate him, yet it became a powerful symbol of his suffering. Isaiah 53:5 says, "He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities." Jesus was suffering because of what Scripture describes as humanity's sin. He was walking toward the cross, the road to Golgotha. Jesus was then led toward Golgotha. The Gospel of John tells us that Jesus carried his own cross. And the other Gospel accounts tell us that Simon of Cyrene was compelled to carry it. The journey was painful. Jesus had already been beaten and weakened. Eventually they reached Golgotha, the place of the skull. There Jesus was crucified between two criminals. The cross was not a comfortable symbol. It was an instrument of Roman execution. It represented suffering, shame, and death. Yet Jesus transformed its meaning. The cross became the greatest symbol of God's love and salvation. Jesus forgave. While Jesus was on the cross, he said something extraordinary. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Imagine that moment. People were mocking him. People had rejected him. He was suffering, and yet Jesus prayed for forgiveness. This is the heart of Christ. He responded to hatred with love. He responded to cruelty with mercy. He responded to sin with forgiveness. The cross shows us how serious sin is, but it also shows us how great God's mercy is. The darkness. Then something unusual happened. Luke 23 tells us that darkness came over the land. The atmosphere became dark as Jesus hung on the cross. Then Jesus cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" These words echo Psalm 22. Jesus was experiencing profound suffering, but he remained faithful. He continued toward the purpose for which he had come. The darkness reminds us that this was not an ordinary death. Something significant was happening. Jesus was giving himself for humanity. It is finished. Then Jesus spoke one of the most powerful statements in Scripture. It is finished. He did not say, "I am finished." He said, "It is finished." His mission had been completed. His suffering had reached its end. His sacrifice had been offered. Then Jesus said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." And he died. According to the Gospel accounts, the curtain of the temple was torn in two. This was deeply significant. It represented a new way of approaching God through what Jesus had accomplished. The cross opened the way for reconciliation with God. Why did Jesus die? But why did Jesus have to die? Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Humanity needed salvation. We could not save ourselves through our own goodness. But God loved the world. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son." The cross demonstrates God's love. Jesus gave himself for sinners. Isaiah 53:5 says, "He was pierced for our transgressions." The cross reminds us that salvation is not something we earn. It is God's gift of grace. Jesus was buried. After Jesus died, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for his body. Jesus was placed in a tomb. A large stone was placed at the entrance. For his followers, it must have felt like everything was over. Their teacher was dead. Their hope seemed gone. But God was not finished. The story was about to change forever. The empty tomb. On the third day, women went to the tomb, but the stone had been rolled away. The tomb was empty. Jesus had risen. The resurrection is the foundation of Christian hope. Jesus was not simply a great teacher who died. He is proclaimed in the New Testament as the risen Son of God. The cross was not the end. The tomb was not the end. Death was not the end. Jesus conquered death. And because Jesus lives, Christians have hope. What the cross means for you. Maybe you're watching this today and carrying guilt. Maybe you're carrying regret. Maybe you feel far away from God. Remember this. The message of the cross is grace. Jesus came for sinners. He came for the broken. He came for those who need forgiveness. The cross tells us that God's mercy is greater than our failures. If you believe Jesus died for you and rose again, take a moment right now and thank him. And if this message touched your heart, share this video with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe for more Bible messages, powerful scriptures, and Christian encouragement. And remember, the cross was not the end. The tomb was empty. Jesus is alive. And because he lives, there is hope.